Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome back to yet another episode on Little Slaw YouTube channel. So, in this series of client-side performance testing, the performance engineering videos, today in this video we are going to see about the first contentful paint. So, before we see what is the first contentful paint, I will just take you through an example of how to see or what is a first contentful paint. So, imagine I'm visiting a restaurant website, for example, the McD, the McDonald's website in my example here. So to check their menu and I want to make a reservation or just I want to make a booking or I want to order few items. So when I click on the website's link here, the page starts loading and we see a blank screen first. So let me click on this. So we see a blank screen first and then slowly we are waiting for something else to appear and that indicates the restaurant's presence. So here we can see all the items are getting loaded one by one. So in terms of the first contentful paint, that is the moment when we see the very first thing, which is the restaurant's logo or the header of the website, and then this where we see the first visual element that shows up on the screen, giving us the idea that the website is loading and it belongs to the restaurant that we are interested in or that the restaurant that we're going to book. So once we see the logo here, so once we see, for example, so here in Amazon we see this logo, and for Argos we see the logo here, and same for Curries. So once we start to see the logo, we can start reading the restaurant's name here by exploring the menu options and gather the necessary information. So the first contentful paint is the point where we begin to engage with the website's content and get a sense of what the restaurant is offering us. So we can see what are all the menus we have, we see what's new, or we can go to the McD app, or we can go to the McD's rewards. So anytime that we open, so the very first contentful paint is delayed. And so in case of, for example, if the first contentful paint is delayed for some reasons and we have to wait for a long time before anything meaningful appears, and it gives us an impression that the website is slow. For example, if this page takes a long time to load, so which means the website is slow, and this delay can be frustrating as it hampers our ability to quickly find the information that we are looking for. So now let's see what happens when the first contentful paint happens or occurs, or what happens during the process of the first contentful paint. So we'll that step by step. And meanwhile, for any of the applications to see the first contentful paint, so here we can see the Lighthouse add-on in the developers tool. So here we can see for this page it's 0.7 seconds for the the first contentful paint, and when it comes to queries it's 0.6 seconds. For Argos it is 1.6 second, which means it's quite slow when compared or when it looks at the benchmark or the baseline. And when it comes to amazon.co.uk it's 0.8 seconds, so which means this first contentful paint is very important in terms of the performance of the application. So now let's see what happens at the step-by-step actions that occur during the first contentful paint. So before we move on to the video, this is me, your Vasan Shanmugam. I welcome you all to Little Sly YouTube channel. So please don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you have not subscribed yet. Like, comment your questions and feedback in the comment section. Share the video with your friends. So now let's see what happens during the first contentful paint. So the first thing, which is the requesting of the web page. So when we click the website link or when we enter the URL in the browser, a request is sent to the server to fetch the web pages. We all know the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, and any other resources. And the second step is parsing the HTML. So as part of this first contentful paint, the second step is the parsing the HTML, where the browser receives the HTML document and start parsing it, which means it analyzes the structure of the document and identifies the various elements like headings, the paragraphs, the images, and the scripts. And the third step is rendering the DOM, where the HTML is parsed, the HTML which has been parsed in the second step. So here at this step, the HTML is parsed the browser constructs the document object model, which is the DOM, and then it represents the web page's structure. So it creates a tree like structure where each element is a node, including the tags, the attributes, and their relationships. And then next, it comes to the fetching of the external resources. So, alongside parsing the HTML, the browser also fetches external resources which are referenced in the document, such as the style sheets, the JavaScript files, the images, and the fonts. And these resources are needed to fully render the web page. And next comes the rendering of CSS. So once the browser receives the CSS style sheets, it processes them and applies the styles to the appropriate DOM elements, which is the document object element model elements. So this step determines how the web page will look in terms of colors, in terms of fonts, in terms of layouts, and other visual aspects. So when it comes to the constructing the rendering tree, so based on the document object model and the CSS information, the browser constructs the render tree, which represents the visual elements of the web page, and it includes only the element that needs to be displayed, taking into account the CSS properties and their relationships. And then when it comes to calculating the layout, the seventh step, the browser calculates the position of each element, the size of each element in the render tree to determine their exact placement on the screen, and this step is known as the layout or reflow process. And finally, when it comes to painting the pixels, finally the browser paints the pixels on the screen where we see according to the calculated layout. So this is where the visual content starts to become visible to the user, and during the first contentful paint, the first meaningful visual element such as the logo or the header or text is painted on the screen. So now we will see the next step, which is how does the FCP, the first contentful paint, impact the performance of the web page. See, this first contentful paint that we see, for example, the logo that we saw, or the web, the header, or anything, whatever that comes as the first contentful paint. So that has actually a huge impact on the performance of the web page. So first, for example, the user perception. So the FCP directly affects the user's perception of the web page's loading speed, and it represents the point at which something visible appears on the screen, providing feedback to the user that the page is loading. It tells the user that, see, wait, the page is loading and just wait for some few more seconds. So a fast FCP gives the impression of a quick and responsive website, while a slow the first contentful paint can make the page feel slower responsive. So this has to be very quick rather than telling the user that wait for some more time that I'm loading. So it should not even give, or it should not even leave the user to think about where is the page loading, or is the page is really loading. And then when it comes to the user engagement, so the time it takes to achieve the first contentful paint can influence the user engagement and interaction with the web page. And if the FCP is slow, the first contentful paint is slow, users may become impatient and leave the page before it evenly fully opens. So it's before even they experience its content, even though high quality or in or high, how much of discount or how much of products do they have, they really don't really care about that. Even they do not even book it, even if they have come up with a lot of discounts, and even if they do not even care about, even if they give the product which they really want to buy at a very critical stage. So a faster FCP encourages user to stay and explore the websites further. So next comes the time to interact. So the first contentful paint serves as a starting point for users to interact with the web page. So once the first visual element appears, users can start engaging with the available content by scrolling, by clicking on the links, or by interacting with the form fields. So by achieving the first contentful paint quickly, it allows the users to begin interact with the page sooner by enhancing the overall experience. And when it comes to perceived performance, the first contentful paint contributes to the overall perceived performance of the web page. Even if the entire page is not fully loaded, a fast first contentful paint creates a perception of progress and responsiveness. So it tells the user that, see, the page is loading, and just wait for a few seconds for the complete page to get loaded. And it keeps the user stay, it holds the user from moving outside of the website or the web page. So users are more likely to perceive a page as fast and reliable if they see meaningful content appearing quickly, even if other elements are still loading. So when it comes to the next, the search up engine optimization, which is the most very important one, which keeps the web page, keeps the ranking of any web page. If you search on Google, so it has to be on the top rated website when it comes to the search up engine optimization. So the first contentful paint is a performance metric considered by search engines when ranking web pages. So search engine prioritize the pages with faster FCP times as it aligns with providing a better user experience. A slow FCP can negatively impact the page's visibility in search results, affecting its organic traffic and discoverability. So, apart from the performance, it also keeps improving the rank of the website to make sure that we are on top of the world. And finally, when it comes to the optimization techniques to improve the performance, we have the following 15 techniques to improve the performance. So the first thing is to minimize the server response time. So how to do that? We optimize the server side code and the database query. So most of the times anything that happens, so the first point to hit is to optimize the server side code and the database queries to reduce the time it takes for the server to respond to requests. And then the second thing is the enabling of caching. So in while we implement the browser caching and server side caching mechanism, this to the store and reuse the static resources such as images or style sheets or JavaScript files. And then when it comes to minifying CSS and JavaScript, we have discussed this in one of our previous video of minifying the CSS and JavaScript can improve the performance. Again, this is same here. So by removing unnecessary white spaces, the comments, the redundant code from CSS and JavaScript files, which will in fact reduce their file sizes and improves the parsing and execution times. And then when it comes to reducing the render blocking resources, so by identifying the critical CSS and inline it in the HTML to avoid rendering delays caused by external style sheets. So how can we do this? So by placing the JavaScript files at the end of the HTML body, or by using the async or defer attributes to prevent them from blocking rendering. And then the fifth option, which is the optimizing of images. So by compressing and optimizing images will reduce the file size without the significant loss of quality. So by using the modern image formats such as WebP and considering the lazy loading images to load them only when they come into view. And then when it comes to the enabling of compression, where we enable gzip or broadly compression onto the server to reduce the size of the transferred data, resulting in faster downloads. And the seventh optimization technique is utilizing a content delivery network. So by distributing our website static assets across multiple servers worldwide to deliver them from the nearest location to the user will in much improvement way, like in much terms or in much percentage, will reduce the latency and improve the load times. And next, when it comes to minimizing the redirects, so by reducing the number of unnecessary redirects in the code, as such each redirect adds additional overhead and increasing the page load time. And when it comes to the ninth point, which is the implementing of lazy loading, by loading images or videos or any other non-critical content only when they come into the user's view instead of loading everything at once. So this can be even optimized to improve the first contentful paint, and then the prioritize above the fold content. So by loading the most important content that appears above the fold first, this allows the user to see and interact with the meaningful content while the rest of the page loads in the background. And when it comes to the 11th point, the optimizing of critical path rendering. So during this step, we will identify, or the developers will identify and optimize the critical rendering path by deferring non-critical JavaScript or by using asynchronous loading and optimizing CSS delivery. And when it comes to the 12th point, which is the minimizing of third-party scripts, so by limiting the number of third-party scripts and only use those that are essential. So third-party scripts can significantly impact the first contentful paint if they are slow to load or render. And then when it comes to monitoring and optimizing the web fonts, we use web fonts sparingly and ensure they're optimized for performance by considering the system's fonts or font subsets to minimize the impact on page load time. And when it comes to reducing the DOM complexity, We can simplify the structure of the HTML and minimize unnecessary DOM elements by reducing the parsing and rendering time. And finally, when it comes to employing the HTTP2 protocol, which allows for multiplexing and concurrent loading of resources, and this results in faster and more efficient page loading. So with that, we come to an end. I believe this video is very useful to you. We will see with another technique in our next video. Until then, it's bye bye from Asan Shanmugam and Little Slaw.